Okay. Okay, you are officially on and you are, hi Ruth, hi Lisa. I'm very excited about having Blue Dove here. As you know, from my talking at Social Action and Caring Community, that I am concerned about mental health, and especially in light of a very prolonged pandemic. I'm concerned about it on many levels, including interpersonal relationships, which include what effect it's had on people living together, married or not married. It's really made us almost frightened to come back into the real world. And how do we how do we re-enter? And what skills do we have and what skills did we drop? I also think we're all nervous about the new variant, nervous at different degrees. And I reached out. I really don't remember how I first found Blue Dove, but I think they're an excellent organization that's doing very exciting moves in the field of mental health. Lisa, am I pronouncing it right? Lisa Ziv. And Lisa is an MBA. She's the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer at Blue Dove, a nonprofit addressing mental health and substance abuse misuse in the Jewish community. Lisa is an innovator, an author, and thought leader on the intersection of faith, family, and Judaism. And she's very connected to mental health. Her experience forms the basis associated with mental illness. As a parent of children with mental health challenges, it's very personal for Lisa, and you'll hear her passion when she speaks. She understands the complicated dilemmas and decisions facing families caring for members with invisible diseases. And I love that term, invisible. Lisa is passionate about building more supportive schools and communities. The Prisma Center for Jewish Day School and Jewish Philanthropy and the Blue Dove Foundation have published her reflections on Jewish holidays. And she writes a blog and I read everything. And she writes a blog for the Times on Israel on strengthening support for families with mental health challenges. Lisa has an MBA and experience in healthcare financial management, operations committee, and manages an online support group of 28,000 parents of children with anxiety and depression. She lives in Baltimore with her husband and 3 amazing teens. So we know you're patient, Lisa, if you have 3 teenagers at the same time.
Some days more than others.
So it's 10 o'clock there?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. I'd much rather be in California with you than here, but we'll take what we can get.
I bet we're glad you're here.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for everybody for dedicating your evening to spend some time talking about mental health in the Jewish community. What I'd like to do is really just start our presentation. It's going to be a very informal talk. There are a few things that Carol and Steve wanted me to cover, but I'd like to save time at the end to be able to answer any questions or topics that you'd like to talk about. So this is the biggest challenge for me is making sure I get the video to play. So let me see how I could do that. I have to share my screen, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Hold on. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Let me know if you can hear this appropriately.
I don't hear anything yet.
You don't hear anything. Okay, hold on. That's my hard part.
When you share the screen, you need to click on where it says the audio. You have to click over to audio and so you can share your audio at the same time. So you unshare, then you share, but before, make sure you clicked on that button right there. Yeah.
Stop sharing and then share, and you have to click on where? Sorry.
I believe it says video. It'll say audio.
I'm sorry, people. All right, well, we may not be doing this.
Well, it's
Switch
go
to
to
phone
audio.
audio settings, got it. All right. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Like,
Let's see.
Steve doesn't charge much for helping.
Can you hear it now?
No,
No. Okay.
wait.
But I think we just heard
I
something.
think we heard something.
Okay. Okay, good.
You
All
may
right,
want
so
to turn
now
the volume up again.
you're hearing but not seeing, right?
Well,
We're seeing.
we're seeing also. See where it has volume right there on the bottom?
Yes.
See what if you can do something with that. You're
I
all the way up
did.
to, there you go.
All right.
We hear faint music. When
Okay.
you were on that screen before where it said output, it was like at a quarter, it should be like at 75%.
All right. You know what? I'm just gonna.
Thank you.
Sorry. All right, I'm gonna get out of that. Okay. Let's see if this does better. All right, you know, we're gonna skip this part and just go straight to the presentation. Is that okay with everybody?
Perfect.
So
Sure.
I'm sorry it didn't work out. Maybe anyway. I just wanted to let you know that the Blue Dove Foundation was really started to address mental health issues in the Jewish community and beyond. We really found that this was really started by a group of do-gooders in Atlanta, Georgia, and we found that there were it was inspired by somebody who really had a substance abuse problem and was not going to her AA meetings because they were in the basement of a church and it was a place she wasn't comfortable in. And unfortunately, she died by drug overdose. And her mother approached us and said that she was firmly convinced if she had been in a Jewish space, that her daughter would be alive today. And that was really the motivation for us starting the Blue Dove Foundation. We address mental health from an education and awareness perspective. We do not provide any clinical advice or any referrals or any therapy. Our sole mission is to increase awareness and decrease the stigma that still exists, unfortunately, in the Jewish community surrounding mental health. And I think it's really important to talk about kind of language because words really do matter. And when we talk about, you know, somebody being, there's a difference between being depressed and having clinical depression. There's a difference, you know, between somebody being stressed out or nervous or anxious and somebody having a diagnosis of anxiety. So I think words really do matter. And we're here to help people understand, not just your average Jewish person, but we also work with professionals, with rabbis, clergy, with lay leaders. We work with camp counselors and staff and school teachers and administrators, really to understand the issues and then to try and help families and help individuals to get the help that they need, all with a Jewish sensitivity and through a Jewish lens. So that's really what the Blue Dove is about. And it's kind of interesting. I came to this work, I was originally on the board of directors, and everybody on our board is personally impacted by mental health. I have 3 amazing teenagers, as Carol mentioned in the introduction, 2 of which who have a serious depression, including self-harm and suicidal ideation, and was actually inpatient, and now, thank God, is doing very well. But we kind of went through a little bit of hell for a while, and I pledged to myself that, you know, once we got to a better place, I wanted to be able to help other families. And that's really why we do what we do. You know, it's interesting because in the beginning of our journey, especially my mother, and maybe this is a generational perspective, but she really wanted there to be a cause and effect. You know, why is her granddaughter so depressed? You know, did something happen? Was there bullying? Was there trauma? Was there abuse? And there really wasn't a cause and effect. It's just the way her brain was wired. So a lot of times just understanding that this isn't caused by something, although there is a hereditary component to mental illness. It's really helping to understand it is what it is, and then we need to address it and help people to get the support they need and that they're comfortable getting. So I say one of the silver linings from COVID is that it's become almost fashionable to talk about mental health. It's not whispered quietly anymore, because I think during the pandemic, many more people, you know, were sort of touched by it directly or indirectly. And so there's not as much sensitivity in trying to reach out and get some help around some of these subjects. So that's what I call one of the silver linings of COVID. You know, it makes it easier to talk about, but certainly not any easier to deal with. So, you know, Blue Dove really exists. We put out resources, we do workshops and trainings. We've developed everything through Jewish lens. We talk about 8 different Jewish mental health values, or midot, that we educate communities about, and then do a lot of interactive workshops for various ages, from preteens to senior citizens. And from the most secular of Jews to the most religious. You know, we like to say it doesn't matter to Blue Dove how you pray or where you pray or if you pray. If you identify as Jewish and you have a mental health question or concern, we really can offer information and awareness and training to help to decrease the stigma and increase awareness. So that's really what we're all about. And we're seeing this at communities across the country, really around the globe now, that the issues are the same. And it's kind of interesting because oftentimes there's a lot of different frictions and factions within various Jewish communities over, you know, how high the mechitza is, or, you know, how short a skirt is, or if you're wearing pants or whatever. When it comes to mental health, all those squibbles and squabbles go away quickly, because it becomes readily apparent that we need to unite and make a difference and try and help the situation. So that's really who we are and what we do. I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about anything you might like to.
In the newspaper in the past 3 days, I want to say, there's been a lot of information about Gen Y and the concern that the mental health of Gen Y, which I looked it up for this meeting. It ends at 40, and I believe it starts at about 22, but don't quote me on the starting age. And that COVID's been hardest on their mental health. And Lisa, I'm wondering if you want to talk about about the different groups. Like, I find the younger people are the more willing they are to say, I'm on an antidepressant, I'm seeing a therapist. It's the seniors that have a harder time with admitting. I think we were brought up that you don't talk about it outside the family.
It is, there's definitely different levels of willingness to talk about it in different demographics. We, as a whole, what we see across the country in the Jewish community is the teens, Jewish teens get the most resources because the schools are aware of it, the camps, you know, the organizations, they get a lot of support. And the preteen market, you're like 8 to 11-year-olds are the most underserved because people think, oh, you know, they're fine. They don't, you know, they don't have anything, and that's not true. We're seeing depression, anxiety in much younger areas, and we are, Blue Dove is also working to work for all those different demographics. We find in general, women are much more receptive to the conversation about mental health and substance abuse than men. We have an incredible partnership with the Conservative Brotherhood National Movement. It's called the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs. They have an incredible program called Hearing Men's Voices, where they bring, you know, men in kind of parlor meeting situations, and they talk about, you know, sensitive issues. One year it was domestic violence. This year they're really focused on mental health. So different demographics and different generations, X, Y, Z, baby boomers, etc., have more or less of an appetite. And we've found no matter what age, if you're amongst a group you feel comfortable in, you're more willing to talk about it. So whether it's over a mahjong table with your best friends, or if you might think that's the last place I'd want to talk about it. Now with Zoom and with online support groups, there's a lot of ways to get resources and get support and still remain fairly anonymous in doing that. But Carol, you're absolutely right. The younger generation is more willing to talk about it because it's normal. The older generation, you know, says, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, you know.
And I don't know how many of you grew up with the saying, and we don't talk about that outside the family. I grew up with that on a daily basis.
And families are, there's still that, I think that still exists in many families. I think what's different over the years is that now there is a lot more community initiatives, programs like Temple Sinai is putting on tonight. There's an interest in understanding issues, and whether it's for helping somebody in your own family or in your community. You know, when my family first was touched by a mental health crisis, I really thought it was just us. I mean, I really did. And now that I know, I can tell you, I live on an average block in an average town, Baltimore, in a very Jewish neighborhood. And I can tell you there are 3 families on my block that are currently dealing with, you know, serious, significant mental health issues. I know about it because now that I have a public role, people come to me. Otherwise, people still keep it quiet. And it's, you know, but we're working on reducing that stigma so people are more comfortable talking about it. And our Jewish professionals are now more educated, more trained than they were a decade ago. Our rabbis and clergy take classes in this. Our Jewish professionals, whether it's a youth group leader or a cantor, you know, they have training, they have workshops, they get classes. So as their education and comfort level increases, that has a triple, sort of a ripple effect within the community.
And the forbidden subject, that the 7-letter word that you don't talk about, is suicide. And not only the person who suicided, but what does that do to the family? What does that do to the close ones? And right now, throughout the country, there's a lot of groups for families of who have survived suicide.
Yes.
And go, Lisa, take it over, please.
Yes, unfortunately, you're absolutely right. And we just observed, I think it was about a week and a half ago, International Survivor of Suicide Loss Day. And we did a 3-day campaign awareness, an online awareness campaign to bring light to the subject. 2 of our board members have been personally impacted by suicide. Our co-president lost her husband to suicide, and another one of our board members lost his father to suicide. So, you know, death by suicide is a subject that's really important. And we're actually writing a comprehensive Jewish view on suicide awareness, education, and prevention, you know, including things like, you know, how do you identify some of the signs? What do you say or what don't you say? What should you say or shouldn't you say when you go to a Shiva house for a suicide survivor? So there's some uniquely Jewish sensitivities around suicide in particular, but around mental health topics in general. You know, the diagnosis, the clinical issues are the same, regardless of your faith-based beliefs. But some of the context to be comfortable learning and helping others can have a Jewish perspective to it.
I would really find it useful if you have something on what to say when you pay a Shiva call, not only for suicide, but for any reason that someone died. I find people very uncomfortable going to Shiva calls, especially now when it's been so long since many of us have been to one.
Yes.
And what do you say and what don't you say? And what do you touch and what don't you touch? And how much is it okay to eat? I'm just walking through that process is really difficult for people.
Yes. And I can send you some follow-up, Carol, on that to share out. And we are, you know, like I said, we're currently developing, it's in the development stages. So we're working on some of those resources because there are very few resources to really help people. And there's a lot of need for that information, for accurate information.
Questions, thoughts, feelings? Mimi?
Amy, you're on mute.
Is Blue Dove a national organization?
Yes, we were started in Atlanta, headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, but again, thanks to COVID, we expanded a lot quicker than we ever expected. And you know, when we were just geographically limited to one city, we could do, you know, one program a month. Now we do several programs a day sometimes, but certainly several programs a week, all by Zoom. So, you know, it's incredible how we can reach people virtually and provide, you know, it's not the same as being in the same room, but we've really been able to provide a much wider impact thanks to virtual and Zoom.
And in California, people have to be licensed. When they're licensed, they have to take courses to do online counseling. You can't do anything online without special classes.
Yes. And again, Blue Dove does not provide any clinical advice or recommendations. Our sole mission is education and awareness around substance abuse and mental illness, you know, including things like depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, you know, all those things. And we purposely seek to be as inclusive as possible, from the most secular Jew to the most religious, and really include, it's cast as wide a net to include everybody. Any other questions?
Do you offer resources? I mean, do you have a resource list? So if somebody contacted you and they wanted counseling after speaking with you?
You know, we really don't, we're not equipped or licensed to provide those types of resources. What we typically do is recommend that people reach out to their local Jewish Family Services, the JFNSs, because they really have great resources in the local place, and we can take it from there. But we do get calls and questions. People reach us at info@thebluedovefoundation.org, and we do try and help people whenever we can, but we're not here like as a hotline to offer clinical advice.
A lot of times you can get a list through insurance companies. That doesn't mean that you're going to love who they send you. It means that's a starting point.
Yeah, and that's a good place to go because you know, mental health is there's definitely a financial aspect to it. Not all health insurances cover mental health. Not everybody has insurance. So it's that's definitely a factor.
Do you know if it's part of the Build Back Better plan to get mental health services provided in your insurance company?
That's a great question. I'd love to do a little research about that. I do know that when, back in the election cycle, each of the candidates put a statement up on mental health and how it was important to their campaigns. So I do know distinctly the Biden campaign was very proactive on mental health and wanted to do things, but whether it's part of the Build Back Better, I don't know.
I'm going to try to find that out as well.
That'd be great. I'd love to follow up with you on that.
Yeah. More questions, feelings, observations of when we go to visit someone after a death or when they're ill, maybe just give some clues on what to say, what not to say. Revisit
So-
people who are ill, talk to them online, talk to them on the phone.
Really, in general, going to a Shiva house, it's better to do more listening than talking. But what's recommended to not do is ask, even though they're natural, curious questions, like, did you see this coming? Or was it caused by something? Or, were there signs, or was it sudden? Those questions can really be personally invasive to the mourner. And it's really not the most relevant thing for somebody who's paying a Shiva call is to say, I'm here for you, and I'm here to support you. It's not that I need to get in your business and know those intimate details. And it's hard because, sometimes those conversations are natural. You want to know, you are asking because you care, but just as a visitor to try and not ask those personal probing questions, because the person who's mourning can, it's obviously a raw and sensitive subject, and they can harbor a lot of guilt. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, should have they picked up on the signs? Could they have done something to prevent it? So those types of subjects are best to keep in mind. Any other questions? There's certainly a lot to talk about. We haven't even touched on other topics. We know in the Jewish community, it's not unlike other communities. The queer community in the Jewish community is so much more susceptible to suicide risk. And so much more susceptible to mental health issues in general, because they already feel more alienated and more, unwelcome in Jewish spaces than your average Jewish person. So that community can be more at risk, and we are getting more and more sensitive to their needs and trying to meet Jews wherever they are, however they identify, to try and keep the community as healthy as possible. So there's certainly a lot of subjects to talk about. I've really enjoyed getting to spend a little bit of time with you this evening to start the conversation. I would invite you to stay part of the conversation. Please follow the Blue Dove Foundation on your phone, on social media. We post, several times a week on Facebook, and there's some really great information and inspiration that you can absorb and share with your communities. So we're happy to continue the conversation any way that you'd like to.
Thank you, Lisa. This has been very, very wonderful.
My pleasure. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulty with the video, but hopefully you came to understand what the Blue Dove Foundation is all about. I should add, you can come to our website at any time, 24/7. At thebluedovefoundation.org. We have incredible free resources for every Jewish holiday. We just had a mental health menorah. We have for every holiday, for all sorts of information. So please feel free to visit the site. And if I can be helpful in any way, just reach out to info@thebluedovefoundation.org.
Lisa, thank you. Especially thank you because it's almost 10:30 in your neck of the woods. And
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad you all came. Hi, Susan, you just reappeared in a different box. You're on, you could put on audio.
Susan, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Susan.
So Carol, you're not having a meeting tonight?
No, we're not having a meeting, but if anyone wants to stay and chat, they're more than welcome to. I'll stay on. But I
Can
appreciate
you
you.
guys hear me now?
We
Now
can
we
hear you
can.
now.
So
Yeah, you
Carol,
can. I was on the wrong mic. Sorry.
Carol, I thought we were having like a I thought we were having a social justice, but not.
No, I sent you an
Nope.
email. You should have,
Okay.
I could have goofed and I'll make sure
No,
you're
I might
on
have
my,
had it. You know what? I get so many emails between work and I often,
I get it. I'll send it to you again. It has the date of the next meeting. Social
Okay.
action is the first Monday of the year.
All right,
okay.
guys, I got to
Bye,
get back to
guys.
another meeting.
Thanks for your
All
help.
right, Susan,
Steve.
have
Sorry
fun. No
about,
problem.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Carol-
stay on if anyone wants to talk. What?
Carol, I was thinking that I think it would be really helpful to have this as a resource that's always posted, not just when there's a talk about it, but that it's kind of like a ongoing post. Because it's so
hard for
important.
Jason to do ongoing posts because there's so much, but maybe at the next social, you and I can talk. I'd like to talk with you before that, but let's talk about it at social action also, I think, and just how to reach out. I didn't want to share this with before because it's very personal and I trust all of you. When my husband passed away, people were always very curious how he passed away because it was sudden. And I remember feeling very frustrated, like, why are they asking me that? I'm in so much pain. Why do they need to know that? And I think if there's a lot of things people said that were just unhelpful, but I think the thing, at least for me, that when was his admin took my hands, looked me in the eye and said, tell me what you love most about him.
Who said that to you?
His admin, my husband's admin. And that probably was the most helpful thing that someone said, because I felt like they were there for the right reason. They were there because they loved him and loved me. And I needed to feel that connection. And I would not ask people about how someone died. But that's just my scenario. Most people don't want to talk about it. And it's very personal.
But I would think a lot of people ask about it.
Oh, a lot of people ask about it. And the other thing, the other statement that you get a lot is they're in a better place. Well, they're not.
I hate that line.
Thank you, Susan.
I
Thumbs
hate
up
that.
for Susan. I hate it.
I don't think it's very helpful.
Well, it's also like,
You know,
I mean, it's like they're in a better place. They should be here, like, why are they in a better place?
yeah.
Is that a Jewish thing
you
to
could
say?
say something like,
I think
No.
so many people said it to me, Ruth, that I
Really?
can't answer your question.
Huh,
I
yeah.
think it was very multicultural stupidity.
Interesting. That's interesting.
I think
I'll be right back.
it's better to say, especially if somebody was sick, it might be better to say they're no longer in pain or something. But I remember as a kid, so I was 18 years old, and one of my classmates from high school died in a car accident.
Ugh.
And it was horrible. This young man had lived through so much. He had kidney disease and all kinds of things. And he'd died in this terrible car accident. I went to the service and they were talking about, now this was a very Christian, I think it was Lutheran or something, and how he's in a better place and all this. And I'm thinking, no, he's not. This is an 18-year-old who fought so hard to stay alive with kidney disease, and then he gets killed in this terrible car accident. How is that a better place?
It's not.
So I've never been a fan of that line.
Yeah.